If we could just give just a few minutes. We have folks who just took a quick break between exec session and our meeting, so we'll give them 2 or 3 minutes. All right, if everyone could please welcome to the Monday, December 15th meeting. If you could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have any public comments? Thank you for joining us. We're going to start with our student representative reports. Jocelyn, riding solo tonight.
Okay, so good news at Willow Avenue Elementary School. Willow Avenue has kicked off the holiday season with our annual gingerbread decorating activities and toy drive. We welcomed parents to Willow on Thursday evening and Friday for parent-teacher conferences. Willow is full of holiday spirit for our Holiday Spirit Week. Students will be showing their school spirit by dressing like a winter wonderland, chilling in plaid, slaying the day, wishing a Merry Grinchmas, and getting cozy in our holiday PJs. We will be ending the week with our Holiday Friday morning opening, where we will be celebrating our December Principal Award winners and getting a visit from Santa. Okay. Good news from Cornwall and Hudson. On Monday, November 24th, Cornwall and Hudson conducted a highly successful reunification drill. Members of the COH building emergency response team worked together to carry out a scenario in which second grade students were transported to CES to be safely reunited with their parents or guardians. A heartfelt thank you to all members of the COH BERT team, to local law enforcement officers, and to Ms. Sapini for thoughtfully coordinating this important and complex exercise. December began with the PTO's annual Holiday Bazaar on December 3rd and 4th. Students have the opportunity to shop for gifts and friends and family. The concert choir from the high school is going to visit COH on December 18th to fill the holes with song and holiday spirit. To keep that spirit flowing, all are welcome to carol with the COH community on the morning of December 19th, beginning at 8:30 a.m. on the front steps of the school. If the weather is inclement, the caroling will be held in the main lobby of COH. The annual 4th grade combined winter concert with Willow Avenue in Cornwall and Hudson will take place on December 16th at Cornwall Central High School. The 4th graders will have been working super hard to prepare for their first performance, and musicians from both buildings will perform in band, orchestra, and chorus. Good news from Cornwall Elementary School. The Cornwall Elementary School PTO holiday shopping event was once again a resounding success. It provided a wonderful opportunity for our students to experience the joy of giving during the holiday season. We also successfully held parent-teacher conferences and are delighted by the great turnout and engagement from our families. These valuable conversations strengthen the vital partnership between home and school, ensuring every student's success. Our CES Student Council will be hosting a Holiday Spirit Week running from December 15th to 19th. Our students will show their creativity and imagination by participating in our fun-filled themed days. All of our students and staff are excited and looking forward to joining in the festivities. Once again, our Dragon Wagon prize cart is going again to all our kindergartners through 4th grade classrooms. All of our students are excited to cash in their hard-earned Dragon dollars for prizes. The Lee Road Winter Concert will take place on Wednesday, December 17th, and on Thursday, December 18th. The CCHS Concert Choir Carolers will be visiting our school to sing carols. Finally, our amazing PTO will be hosting a movie night. It is a great way to show off the start of a holiday season with a fantastic, fun-filled family night. Spending time with family and friends is the perfect way to bring community spirit. The laughter and sweets will be spilled over during the showing of The Grinch. All schools wish everyone a happy holiday and all the best in 2026. Good news from CCMS. CCMS band students provide music at the Cornwall tree lighting. Many thanks to Mr. Aloja for bringing our students out to kick off the holiday season in Cornwall. This week, 5th and 6th grade students will enjoy a fun and sweet afternoon on Friday for the annual PTO gingerbread house build. Students have the opportunity to make some sweets and creations. Many thanks to the PTO. Our 8th grade students got dressed up for their annual red carpet event. We are so thankful for all of the volunteers that have made this event happen. It was a fabulous evening. The middle school would also like to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season. And now from the high school, it has been a great month at CCHS. The holiday spirit is everywhere. Every day, new and fun holiday activities take place in the library, from ornament decorating to holiday cards. Spirit Week commences at the high school this week with different themes every day to celebrate the impending holidays. Our second annual door decorating competition, hosted by the Spirit Club, ends this Wednesday, December 17th at the end of community lunch. They are all beautiful and festive designs. A large thank you to all for filling the hallways with holiday cheer. The CCHS winter concerts went phenomenally well last week, with a great turnout and, of course, amazing performances. Congratulations to Signe Johnson and Fiala Query for participating in the NISPA All-State Music Festival this week in Rochester, New York. These two young musicians both received a perfect score on their audition last spring and were chosen from more than 6,000 students from all over the state to participate in this year's All-State Mixed Chorus. Congratulations. The CCHS Orchestra is presenting holiday music in the lobby this Friday, December 17th, from 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. We encourage all to stop by and attend this annual event. Auditions for the spring musical, Mean Girls, take place today in the high school. And of course, best of luck to Maeve, who's also auditioning there. We are looking forward to an incredible performance. Exciting news as more and more seniors receive college acceptances and scholarships. Congratulations. Take a night off from cooking for the busy holiday season and support the CCHS Senior Fest fundraiser at Bubba Coos Burritos at 113 Temple Hill Road in New Windsor on December 16th, Tuesday, from 5 to 8 p.m. Don't forget, if you order online, show the flyer or write fundraiser in the comments. Maeve and I wish everyone a happy holidays and are looking forward to seeing you all next year.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Superintendent's update.
Well, I think Jocelyn covered it all. So just a big thank you to our middle school band. They performed the national anthem and taps at the Wreaths Across America event, and also lit up the tree at the tree lighting. So very exciting, and thank you to them for that. As Jocelyn mentioned, we are all things festivities here in the school district. Between theme days, I have a theme T-shirt on. We have all kinds of amazing things happening. So no matter what building you go into, either you've got a crazy hat, you've got blinking lights, you've got crazy socks and tops and whatever it might be. So I'm glad everyone's having a great time with it as we get ready to celebrate our holiday season. And just on behalf of our district, I just want to wish everybody a healthy and happy holiday season and a happy new year.
Thank you. So for the president's update, I wanted to give an update on two things in particular. The first being our superintendent search. So district-wise has reported that the outreach portion of the search has wrapped up, and they've reported that we have some incredibly impressive applicants for the job, and they're in the process of screening them, and they will be bringing their slate of final recommended candidates for the board's consideration in early February. I will say, someone was asking about timing, and I think the holidays really kind of puts a pause on things in terms of everyone's availability and sort of the momentum. So I think that's why that pushes us to there. And just to be clear, so what happens is they will present to us a slate of, let's say, 7 people. We have a meeting with them. They call it a binder meeting, and they go through all of the candidates. And then the board discusses in terms of next steps from there, because that's when the board gets involved in the interviewing process. The board has received all the feedback from staff, faculty, and community forums. And we did also get the responses to the public survey that was out there. We had 126 responses, and that feedback will factor into our evaluation of the candidates and what we are talking about, et cetera, in our interviews. And then for our strategic plan, I'm really excited to tell everyone that Megan and I met with HYA just to get an overview of the proposed timeline and to better understand the process and what would be required of the board and what are the upcoming tasks. So at this point, I just want to give you a high-level overview. There's nothing to do quite yet because we're really going to hit the start button after the holiday, but you can start to kind of marinate over some of this. So the main working group is the steering committee, and that is a committee that's comprised of really whomever we deem appropriate. So you want to have a committee that is reasonable. So I think 20 was the max that they recommended. And it could be board members, community members. It really runs the gamut. But what I would ask you to do over the course of the next couple of weeks, on a long drive or, when you can't fall asleep, start to think about who from our community you think would have valuable input and insight for a steering committee. And we will talk about that after the new year. And also, if you have interest in being on it, I want to be clear that the commitment of a steering committee is 2 full days of work. And that would be in the March timeline. And it could be a 9 to 5, a 12 to 8. Those are the things that we would decide once we figure out who everyone is, but that is the requirement. The actual strategic plan itself, if everything goes according to plan, should be completed by June. And that is ideal so that staff can use it to be planning and guiding the 26-27 school year. That does not mean that the communication and the official rollout and, the I don't want to say marketing, but the educational materials around it, they will not be ready by June. That will happen sort of over the summer at the same time, but the plan itself will have been presented to the board and we will have provided feedback or approved it. So that is what we're looking at for a strategic plan. I think you're really gonna enjoy working with the firm. They were really very, they were just easy to work with and answered a lot of questions and clarified things, and they have a lot of experience doing this. And so even when it came to the number of people, I'm like, okay, well, what's the best practice? And what do you recommend? And what have you seen? And they were just really forthcoming. So I think you're really going to enjoy working with them and seeing how that process unfolds. Okay, thank you. So now we have our presentation. It's our annual data presentation by Dr. Figne, the interim ASI. Thank you. Are you all set? Do you need anything? Okay.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Affigne. I'm the interim ASI here at Cornwall. Before we begin the data presentation, I just want to do a shout out to all the folks who are involved in the assessment process. I know we talk about annual tests, our regions, our AP exams, our 3 through 8 exams. But it's important to acknowledge all the people that are involved in the process, our administrators who have to organize things, our central office staff who have to, work in the data portal, make sure all of our testing is ordered, our secretarial staff, our custodial staff who participate and help us set up rooms, our teachers and also our students. So it's important to acknowledge everybody involved in the process. So I just wanted to do a shout out. I also want to do a shout out for today's presentation. Karen Brooks, who's here tonight, she helped me gather a lot of the data, so she was very instrumental in setting up the process. I also spent some time talking with Catherine Milholm and also with Joe DeBall. He also gave us some data for the presentation, too, so I just want to do a shout out to them. So tonight's presentation is kind of in 5 parts. We have the 3 through 8 state assessments plus the regions. Those are our state assessments. We're going to talk a little bit about diploma requirements, which are very similar to past years. I know we're all anticipating the portrait of a graduate and new requirements, but we haven't really gotten some specific details from state ed yet. We'll talk about PSATs and SATs, advanced placement exams and dual enrollment, and then some information about beyond Cornwall Central School District. So 3 through 8 exams and the regions. Most of this information in this report came from the New York State data.com. If you can Google any school district, NYSED data, and then add the school district, and you can come up with information about any school district in the state. So most of that information came from there. Some came from School Meter, and again, the rest was also supplied by staff members. So just a reminder that we're doing this transition from the Common Core state assessments to the next generation standards. It's important to keep in mind, too, that this process and this transition and these assessments were supposed to roll out 3 or 4 years before, but COVID kind of got in the way, and so things were put on pause. But you can see up there that in the spring of 2023, we had the rollout of the 3 through 8 next generation standards and assessments for math and ELA. And we also had Common Core standards at the high school level, too, being rolled out. In the spring of 2024 was the first year that we gave the assessments in science. They were revamped in grades 5 and 8. Prior to that year, we used to give the science exam in grade 4, but now we give it in grade 5, we give it in grade 8. 2025 was the first administration of, again, the next generation geometry and life science biology exams. And then in 2026, this coming year, students will sit for the Algebra 2 next generation, and also Earth and Space Science, and then also the English regions. And then finally in 2027, the plan is for the next generation chemistry and also physics exams. And that will complete the whole cycle of the transition to the next generation assessments. If anybody has any questions, stop me as I go along. So if you want additional information about the timeline and the different assessments that are being given, the links are there. They've all been checked and they've been updated. So now we're going to transition to the grades 3 through 8, ELA and math assessments. So test refusal, which as you know, has gotten better in most districts. And so here, when transitioning towards and almost there, and actually have achieved the 95%, 90% that the state is asking for. You can see overall test refusals for ELA exam is 87%, the average in grades 3 through 8. And so these are how what the ratings mean on the state assessment. When a student gets a 4, they get a 3. 3s and 4s are proficient. 2 is partially proficient. They're progressing towards proficiency. And then a level 1 on the exam is below proficient. And so when we talk about proficiency, we usually group levels 3 and 4 together. So here, we're going to go through, and you can see overall, grades 3 through 8, you'll see that 68% of our students, if you go to the far right column, achieved proficiency, and then these next set of graphs and charts will compare the district to the state performance on the exam. And then here you can see, again, proficient levels along the right-hand column, and then you can also see how they, level ones, the percentage of level ones, level twos, level threes, and level fours. And this presentation will be on the district website tomorrow night too, by tomorrow, so people can reference it if they'd like to go back and look at the information. This is pretty consistent with what has been presented to you previously in these state assessment reports. Also, too, there's another link here and this is the 3 through 8 report card for the district. So if you click on that link, it'll bring you right to the summary report for grades 3 through 8. All the slides that are here are also listed there. And then if you're looking for any information in particular, English language learners, students in foster care, migrant, not migrant, you can find all that information. If you click on that link, it'll take you right to the state website where the district's report is. So in comparison for the district to the county, you can see, and again, we have last year's results on the right-hand side. So there's 17 districts, public school districts in the county. You can see where Cornwall is ranked for each of the exams. So grade 3 ranked first, and then last year ranked first. And so you can go down pretty consistent with the previous year. And then overall, when you combine Cornwall's 3 through 8 ELA assessments, overall, the district is ranked first in the county when you look at all the 3 through 8 assessments in ELA. And this is very similar to what we just saw in ELA. This is the math refusal report. You can see 85% at the bottom, grades 3 through 8. And when you see combined, that's combined Regents and also 8th grade math students who took the math state assessment. And in some districts, there are some districts that actually do offer algebra in grade 6. I don't know how that happens, but they do. And the same thing, grade 7.
And Kathy, just to interject, so the 85% is the participation, not the refusal.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's okay.
Thank you. And the same thing, level 1, 2, 3, and 4, regarding what the levels mean on the state assessments. And then this is the 3 through 8 district to state proficiency comparison. So to the far right, 78% of our students proficient. The state has 57. And then you can see combined, the 8th grade students who also took the math assessment, 76 to the state 60. And then what's really nice is the Regents, 100% of the students in 8th grade who took the Regents got 100% proficiency. Same chart as before, proficiency on the right-hand side. So overall, grades 3 through 8, 78% of our students scored a level of 3 or a 4. And then the same thing, the link takes you to the state website where you can see the grade, the math report for the school district, grades 3 through 8, and you can see it all broken out for all the subgroups there if you wanted to explore. And then here's the ranking with the county. And again, overall ranking, grades 3 through 8, ranked first in the county. Anybody have any questions about the state assessments, 3 through 8, math and ELA?
Sorry. Thank you so far. Yeah, just the, I guess it was the ELA Orange County comparison. It was just surprising to see 2 years in a row, right, yeah,
This one here?
yeah,
Okay.
thank you. The grade 7 to be ranked third 2 years in a row because that cohort would then be in a different grade. So the one that placed in third in spring 2024 logic would tell you that maybe grade 8 this year would be ranked third or whatever. But so it seems that it's more of, if there's a correlation, it's more of an issue with grade 7 than with that cohort. But that's just me making a conclusion while glancing at the data. So I don't know if there's more to that story.
Okay.
Yeah, grade 5 has mirrors that effect. So it just makes you wonder, what's driving that.
I have some questions on this, but would you mind if I just hold them to the end of your presentation?
Sure.
Thanks.
Oh, good.
I'm sorry, it was a question. I don't know if we have, if there are any, I'm not asking for a direct
Yeah.
answer, but is that normal to see that? Am I expecting too much to think that, the placement would follow the cohort?
I had a similar, when I saw it, I thought,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. Like, I wonder what shifts. And like, I think about our 5th grade is the first year you're in the middle school, right? 5th grade is when, my kick with reading, it's when you're reading to learn, not learning to read.
Yeah.
That's when you notice a lot. So these are just my,
Yeah.
The world according to Christine. But I thought it was interesting too. Like, what happens in that grade? Listen, 1st or 2nd, they're both good places, right? But what happens that there is that drop, and I don't know, we probably have to dig into it more, but.
Yes. So it would be a question to pass on to Kate. But the other piece is that sometimes digging more so into the data to see how many high-level 3s and low-level 4s or high-level 2s. And so we have some students that just kind of teeter, right? There are some years they're level 2, some years they're level 3, to see who those students are on that band. And they call it a standard deviation. Like any given day, kids can score a level 3 or a level 4 or a level 2 or a level. So it could be something along those lines where those kids are just kind of like there. But it's good data to look at, and we can certainly, push the question over to Kate and, have her perspective. I know that they did a deep data dive on Superintendent's Conference Day. I actually went in there and saw all of the data reports and all of the drive that she created for her students, her teachers to look at. So I know that they're doing that work, and so it would be a good question to ask.
Brendan, if you're interested, if you're interested in like tracking cohorts, like the same group of students across years, because obviously 3rd graders become 4th graders, 4th graders, I do have that if you'd like in Excel. So if you just want to take a look at that, I do have it broken down, and I can maybe save some work.
Is that the piece of paper you're holding in your
No,
hand?
this is a
that
piece of
was very
paper. I have an
timely.
Excel
Okay.
spreadsheet that has it broken
Got it.
down.
I would appreciate that. Thank you, Christian.
All right, now we're going to move on to the Regents exams. So here are the Regents exams, and again, we just kind of organized the slide to show that the new exams when they're happening, and then also the projected new exams for the next generation standards. And then how many students took each exam this past spring. And then you can see English Language Arts, 280 students, global, US history. Normally in those classes, most of the class takes that exam that year. I want to point out that for chemistry and physics, because we also have chemistry and physics AP exams, in some districts, students who take the AP exams also take the Regents, and in some districts they don't. I believe here, students aren't asked to also take the physics Regents if they've taken the physics AP. So you have a different pool of students. So when you do the county comparisons, it's not really comparing apples to apples, because you're comparing yourself to districts where those kids who took AP chemistry have also taken the AP Regents exam. And so that changes the pool of students taking the exam, and also the data that comes out of the exam. And so here 5 levels. 5 exceeds standards, 4 meets, 3 is partially meets, 2 partially meets standards expectations, and then 1 does not demonstrate knowledge and skills for the standards. So we consider levels 3 and above as proficient, very similar to the AP exams. And keep in mind, Regents are administered in August, January, and also June. And that's interesting too when it comes to the next generation standards. Students who took the course, and let's say for instance I took the course as a freshman, I took Earth Science Regents exam, and I didn't pass it as a freshman, but the next year my district moves on, now they're giving the Earth and Space Sciences. I still have the ability to take the old exam, and so we'll see some pass scores of the old exam too, and the majority of our students are taking the next generation. So we do have those students do have the ability to retake the exam that they didn't do well on. And some students retake the exams because they want a better grade. That's something else to consider too. So this is the ELA Regents. You can see our proficiency rate, again, levels 3 and above, was 89%, and the state's proficiencies rate was 75%. And then you can see the breakout for levels. And this is Algebra 1. This was the new exam. Geometry. Again, the new exam. Algebra 2. This is the living environment. 32 students took this exam. So they took the old exam. And the next slide is the life science biology exam, which is a new one. Again, chemistry will change next year or the following year. And then physics will too. So again, chemistry and physics are the two exams where we don't have our students who take AP also take the physics exam and chemistry. I think what's also noteworthy is that level 5s, do you notice the level 5s are consistently higher than the state throughout? And I think that's impressive. Shout out to our teachers. And then here again, if you click on that link, it'll bring you to all of the Regents exams and on the state ed website. Anybody have any questions about the Regents? Yes, Christian.
So I have a question about the new life science biology and also the Earth and Space Science exam. As I'm sure you're aware,
Yes.
the last June it was not a very popular exam with the teachers.
No.
And for two things. Obviously, there's always a question that everyone's like, how could they ask that question? And, like, there were quite a few of those.
Yeah.
But also that the framework of these new exams.
The investigations.
The investigations, but also like that there were a lot of questions that were, I think the reason why teachers were unhappy was the framework of this is like, it's like, read my mind what I think the right answer is while you investigate or come to a conclusion about something. But so the point about it is that they were kind of cute and I guess smug. I guess the exam, that would be the term that some of the teachers I know did that, which is that they were unhappy with the exam because the exam was almost self-consciously trying to be smart in a way that was confusing for students and also even confusing for people preparing for it. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts or comments about that and what that might mean going forward, because I think we took some students, we did not take any last year the Earth and Space Science.
Yeah.
Everyone took the old
One
Earth Science.
did take.
One
yeah.
did, but most of our students took the Earth Science. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And then some students took the life science biology. which is a new.
Most of our students took the life science
Right.
biology, and then 32 students took the living environment, which was
Right.
the old one. So I have, I think the whole process was confusing. I think the way, when you look at the original documents for the implementation timeline, many districts read the document and thought that all students had to take this last year in 2005, that all districts had to move forward and take the new living life science biology exam. But some districts misunderstood that, and they thought since they were still giving the old exam, that they could take the old exam, but that old exam really was in existence for students who had previously failed living environment. But again, the directions, nobody did anything wrong. There was no bad actors sitting at the table. People were very confused about the process and about the rollout. For the exam too, I know that there were some questions about, well, there was a question about erosion on one of the exams, and they had never talked about erosion, but erosion appears in previous science standards, so kids should be familiar with that term. I know that the directions were confusing because there were charts and tables, and when they showed them the chart and the table, they didn't refer students back to the chart and table. Typically in previous exams, it would say, go back to table whatever, go back to chart whatever. And that wasn't there. It would appear once, and then some students were trying to answer questions based on their knowledge and not referencing the tables. So there was a lot of confusion. I think people thought the state would acknowledge and say something, but there was silence. What I thought was interesting too is it was the first time in my experience that the state said, have people call us directly. So that's what, I mean, I was down working in Rockland County at that time, and when I went to a Rockland BOCES meeting, that's what we were told at our curriculum council meeting, that we were to tell our parents to call the state directly, not to field questions anymore, call the state directly. And so we happily said, okay, here's the information. So I think that, and I don't think the state's gonna change the layout of the exam. There was also confusion too. Some people took test questions off of old biology exams or living environment exams and used them, and some parents took issue with teachers who did that. Well, just because the state changed the standards doesn't mean that our concepts and understanding of biology changed, right? Because New York State redid the standards. So there was just a lot of confusion, misunderstanding, and I think frustration.
Yeah, and I can tell you, leading into the exams, and we're continuing to do this work, we've spent a lot of time with our science department. Brian Goodwin's our department chair, and he's been really fantastic getting the group to embrace the changes in terms of it's a reading exam. So, it's funny when you switch levels, you go from this level where everything is reading and content based, and it's all kind of combined to, as you move along, and Jocelyn, right? Like in your classes, you don't necessarily think of science and looking at the content as a reading content. And that was a big piece with the Lexile level across the state where people struggled. And so kudos to our science department. They're continuing to do this work where they've teamed up some of our classes, Brian specifically with earth science, with our librarian, and doing science research as part of what they're doing in their classroom. So they're really learning true skills and how to apply them, plus doing the investigations to prepare for the exam. Oftentimes in New York State, when there's a shift in a Regents exam, teachers prepare by saying, show me the test. That's not what we're doing. And in fact, the state wasn't releasing pieces to it for that exact reason. So the philosophy of science has changed. It's definitely more investigation based, which is real life and practical. But kind of getting those shifts in practice and getting our kids and breaking down the reading in the questions is something we're kind of going back and retraining our kids, back to what you see them doing on the younger level with highlighting, marking up, and so on. And, that's just one example of how the practice has changed and what our teachers have done to prepare them. But lots of professional development around it, and we'll continue to do that.
Yeah. I know teachers were asking to attend BOCES for Superintendent's Conference Day. There was a lot of PD, and I also noticed, too, a lot of them taking online classes, trying to learn more about the science and updating themselves.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, so we even did release time within our school day for our science teachers and actually for our math teachers as well to get together last year to kind of start with this work, and they did go down to P&W BOCES and also out to OU BOCES to get trained on this.
Just as a follow-up question, because I think this has happened not just with the science exams, but I think also previously with the social studies exams that kind of did a transition earlier than this.
Yes.
And this idea that they're embracing an authentic exam that is more close to reality of science or social studies or history. And I think that, I think in that attempt that a lot of people have felt that the exam has actually gotten worse. Because this idea of, what people think is authentic is often just their own construct of what they think people do. Which is that, historians spend a lot of time for close readings of documents, which probably is not a description of anyone who's doing actual historical research. Or that scientists are actually doing hypothesis, collect the data, analyze the data, which, as someone once said, is like in real research, no one follows the scientific method. And so the point about it is that we're presenting this, and so that when you assign a test on that, it actually is really a bad instrument in gauging what people know. And that even though the old test might have seemed like to be more rote or, in a sense, less realistic, that it might have been a better gauge of what was actually the level or the knowledge level or the grasp of the subject that a student had. And so, yes, there are all the things that you mentioned. There wasn't as much of the test provided. I think a lot of people felt the guidance was not true, which mean, like, they said we're going to ask about this, and then it never showed up, and then things that never were on the guidance didn't show up, but showed up quite a bit. But and every teacher will complain about that. But I think the point about it is like how these tests are changing, and whether we're just training our teachers, but also then training our students in test-taking skills, which are not connected to the subject matter or the title on the test. So if you just give like 5 reading tests, a science reading test, a social studies reading test, a math reading test, you're just really testing reading 5 different ways and not necessarily testing math, social studies, or science independently. And I think that would be the concern. I mean, that's a concern that I have, but but you kind of answered it with some of your thoughts that this is something we're going to struggle with. I don't think the state is going to change. And so what is our best approach going forward? And thank you for answering that.
Thank you. I've been giving state assessments in my career since, I think, 2019 was when, no, 2009? Yeah, 2009. So I've seen the whole, but I also seen all the angst every time, Common Core learning, well, the initial learning standards, and then with the Common Core learning standards, and so we had to make all the adjustments. So we see this every time there's a change in the rigor of the test or the format of the test, and it's important that our kids understand format, because format should not get in the way of how they're doing on the exam. So they have to be very comfortable in the format of the exam so that doesn't get in their way. And so a lot of this is a learning curve for them, and also for teachers too, how best way to get them to the point where they can access and be able to understand and answer the question to the best of their ability, and the test truly does reflect what they know or don't know versus what they can't figure out based on, again, the format. So it's a learning curve, but I have hope. I think things will get better. And the bottom line is, when you look back at how the students scored on those assessments, most students are doing well. I mean, when you look, they're still scoring above the state. They still have level 5 is still, they are doing far better than the rest of the state, getting 3s, 4s, and 5s. So there's a lot to celebrate too. And similar to what we just talked about with the rankings, here are the rankings also for the county for the Regis exams. Oh, that's right. Yeah, there was something, yeah. It was a trigger, right? They felt that one of the questions, yeah. Anybody have any questions about the rankings or the data up there?
I'll just say that I mean, as a parent of students that went through that, I believe it was global history, or it might have been U.S. history in 23. That was the first year that it was like the new reading
Yeah.
exam, and the history teachers really adjusted, did a lot of study, and so that the to your point, the process or the
Yeah.
format didn't get in the way. They really
Yeah.
did do a lot of extra work with folks getting them comfortable with that format. And to Christian's point, whether it's really a reading test and is that worthwhile, that's a philosophical, larger discussion. But the teachers really did buckle down for folks that needed it, and they did a great job with that.
Teachers, they just need to know. We just need to know what it looks like and what it feels like, and then once you kind of walk through it, you get a sense of it, walk around in it, and you develop a game plan and you move forward. That's what they do, right?
Any other questions, or is that? Oh, keep going. Sorry.
Keep going. All right, diploma requirements, which really haven't changed. So same slide as last year. We're all waiting to see what it's going to look like, the more specifics about the change, the portrait of a graduate. So, but for now, those are the requirements. And again, the next slide has links where if you want to check out and look and learn more about the different pathways, they're all in the next link. And this is just a nice description about the Regents exams. Must pass 5 Regents exams with a score of 65 or higher. And then what Regents exams that you need. And as you know, the Regents exams for high school diploma, that's sunsetting. So that won't be a requirement anymore, but my understanding is the Regents aren't going to go away. It's very similar to when I was in high school. We didn't have to take, we didn't have to have Regents exams in order to graduate. That was considered to be an advanced diploma. If you got a Regents diploma, it was an advanced diploma. Otherwise, the local diploma was the most common diploma that was given. So I feel like we're going back to that time. Anybody have any questions about graduation requirements?
I have one question.
Sure.
So I know the state hasn't come out with much on portrait of a graduate, so this is mostly speculative. But the portrait of the graduate, as we kind of understand it, is to create alternate pathways to graduation outside of passing the Regents. Given that Cornwall generally has not had a problem with graduating most of our students with the Regents exams, would you anticipate that Cornwall will probably still stay in the traditional Regents as a demonstration of proficiency for most of our students, or do you see us broadening out to some of the other pathways that are kind of been sketched out in Portrait of the Graduate?
What I envision, I mean, I have your graduation rates. I mean, percentage of your students who get diplomas, Regents diplomas. I'll skip ahead. Yeah. So your high school graduation rate, 97%. Your graduation rate is impressive.
And as you know, like in other parts of the state, that can be as low as 40, 50, 60%
Yes.
for graduation for the
Yes.
same one. And I would be surprised if ours ever dipped really below 95%, just given the socioeconomic status of the community. So my point is that since a lot of the Portrait of the Graduate is to create alternate pathways around the Regents examination, some people have interpreted this as the Regents going away. But do you think that for Cornwall, given our kind of demographics and our past performance, are we still going to be more or less in the traditional pathway, where, hey, you take our Regents to demonstrate readiness for graduation?
I feel more comfortable framing it just for New York State.
Right.
But I envision that for some students, the Regents get in the way. And so I envision that we'll probably have maybe more students who maybe will participate in AP exams and dual enrollment in SUNY courses. I anticipate that we'll have more students maybe explore CDOS. I expect there may be some districts that will start to look at international baccalaureate. So I envision that there'll be more local control over how we're still going to have guidelines from the state, and once we figure out how to maneuver around them, I just think it's going to give more opportunities for students. That's how I envision it. And I don't think that your your graduation rates will drop. I think that students are classified students, students with disabilities. I envision that they'll have more opportunities too.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Kathy's saying, we are really looking at this as a nice opportunity to embrace what kids need to make them successful, and not in that traditional model that works for some kids, that doesn't work for all kids. So to answer your question, Christian, I think it's a little early just in the fact that we're waiting on more guidance, and we've already started the process of looking at, what does it mean for more project-based internships for a high school student? Like, what does that look like? Like Kathy said, maybe it's a student who wants to achieve some more of the college work and so on. What does that look like for them? I think the biggest issue we're going to have in Cornwall is, how do we manage all of it? Like, we can't have 250 different paths. So we're going to have to figure out, if there's 3 paths or 4 paths, what does that look like? What's the criteria around that and so on? So I don't really see us sticking to a traditional model for all students, because it doesn't work for all students. So I think, we've already started the work in advance of this, before even getting some of the requirements and what it might look like, just kind of hearing comments around the state and just knowing what's good for kids. Like, I think this is a really good opportunity, like Kathy said, for some more local control of what we can do.
So just to kind of maybe clarify my own question, which is that I understand that, we're not going to have all the pathways. And I do appreciate that. I think what we're going to do is that there's going to be more opportunities. But between Infinity and the old system, which is one pathway, since we are fairly successful in that pathway, what is Cornwall's disposition towards that? So if there's been preliminary work towards what are the 2 or 3 alternatives that we see that are going to be created locally in our district, what might those be? Because perhaps that's something that we want to field out for more discussion, both for parents and students who are, going to favor certain pathways. And we may, as you say, resources is going to limit our ability to make everyone their unique, to provide a program. Obviously, everyone can find different ways individually, but the point is to create programs or grooves that people can naturally take, in addition to just, let's say, the default of 4+1 and what it's been for the last decade or so. So that's what I was, and I didn't realize that the state has not provided the guidance, and we are not finished with our preparations. But if there was any work in that direction, I just was interested in what that might be.
I think some of the work will be, and I envision what districts will be doing is looking to probably just developing surveys to get some feedback from families, what they would like to see, staff members, maybe what some students would like to see. I see people reaching out to gather some data because they're going to want to grow something that's going to be appropriate for their own culture in their district and what they locally want. I think it's a good time for people to explore what they're wanting to see for their students, for their children in the community. So I'm not in a position to say what I think you should do, but I think that there's going to be a process in place, and districts will do it as they see fit. They will come up with their own process to figure out what is important to them, what is important that they want their children to know, and then how will you assess that information?
And then just speaking of assessment, so there is assessment still attached to this, and I don't really foresee the regents going away right away completely, because districts have to figure this out. So a lot of conversations around the county and around the state are, as BOCES consortiums, can we team up and look at what assessments would be appropriate? Are we going to create local assessments? Are we going to determine standardized assessments that we're all comfortable with, or at least a launching point from? So it really is early, and some of this I don't really have a direct response to you, Christian, for what that plan might look like. It's more in theory right now as we build it and get more guidance from the state, but that's kind of where our head is on that.
I think it'll start to take shape once we get some definitive information from the state. I think that we're all trying to hypothesize what that's going to be, but I think that we're pretty much wanting to see what is the definitive information coming from the state.
My question was, when is that coming? And that was just I thought it
Yeah,
was,
we thought-
I just was not in the know, but apparently it's We don't know.
No, I mean, we
So it makes it hard because you can spend all the time hypothesizing and then they come out with something that's,
It was originally
That's
promised
very-
yesterday.
this way it goes, right?
I can tell you that every Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES, I go to their curriculum council meetings. I also go to the council meetings over in Orange County, and also when I was down in Rockland County, and it's the same question. I mean, people bring it up. It's like it's a topic, an ongoing topic of a discussion as to where are we in the process. And we get little bits of information, but nothing that's enough to, to excite people. It just kind of says we're working on it still. But it's a big thing to dismantle, I mean, a graduation system and to build a new one. It's a big lift. So I got to give them that. So Regions of diploma recipients, 99%. I mean, so really, again, a lot of good stories up here. So here's our high school graduation rate. And now we're on to the PSATs, SATs.
I'm sorry, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
97%, roughly, what are we talking about in people? 4, 5, 10? And I don't mean it to be like a quiz. I just mean like, and I could probably do the math myself.
Maybe
Christian could probably already has it done. If we have
Maybe 7 or 8.
249 students, 7 people.
Yeah.
Okay, I just was trying to get an idea.
So National Merit Student Acknowledgements, that's all based off of the PSATs. People know that's like the pre-SAT. We give that to them 1 year before the SATs are given to students in school. And so this describes the process. About 1.5 million students take the PSATs in this country, and then you can see that they filter through categories to be recognized. Commended students, the cutoff for the top 50,000 students, that's determined by April. So the students take the exams typically in the fall, and then by April, this information starts to be filtered out. 34,000 students are recognized as commended, and then you can see 16,000 will become semifinalists, and then you can see what happens when they're semifinalists. And then finalists, and then scholar. And so the next slide shows you that we have 4 students awarded as commended scholars, and then we have 1 student moved to semifinalist. We don't know if we'll have a finalist. That hasn't been determined yet, and so that'll be acknowledged later. Probably, I think it's February. Is that usually when we get it? And then this is just a comparison between last year and this year's SAT scores for students. You can see the New York State mean SAT score is 1,056, and that was actually the mean score stayed similar from 2024 to 2025. And we have slightly more students who scored above the mean. Actually, 4% of our students from 2024 to 2025 scored above the mean. That's pretty impressive.
And 2024, is that the graduating class of 2024? Because a lot of those folks were tested.
Yes. No, it's the year that they took the
exam. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, here are the AP exams. And so this is a list of the AP exams that are offered through the district, and there was a new one this year, pre-calculus. That's a new AP exam that's been or AP course that's been offered for this year. So there was a question during Joe DeBald's presentation about students who took AP classes in 2023, then 2024, then 2025, and so this kind of just displays. You can see, like for instance, in biology, 2023 to 24, we had a jump, and then we came down a bit for 2025. But you can see, if you scroll through, you can kind of see what's happened each year for those 3 years with those exams. I think also, too, the whole dynamic about taking AP exams has changed over time. I remember, I mean, I've been involved with 4 different high schools in 4 different districts, and what I'm hearing more often is that students are being told to balance their AP classes and not always take 4 rigorous AP exams at one time. Some are. I mean, I know, for instance, like my daughter, she wanted to be a pre-med student, and so she concentrated in the science and math because that's what she needed to do, because colleges are also looking for very well-rounded students, and it's very hard to put all your time and effort to 4 rigorous exams each year, and then also have time for sports and music and, you know, community and family. And so most schools are looking at helping students and families balance, you know, their course load. So that's something else to take into consideration too, that I don't think we're in a climate anymore where we're just trying to drive our students that way. So there's more of a balance. Anybody have any questions about? So here, again, some questions during Joe DeBolt's presentation. So I tried to show you in a graph. Like if you look at the top, the green line, that's the total, that's the percent of AP students who scored 3 or above on 1 or more exams, depending on how many exams that they took. And keep in mind that we had 248, I think, students take AP exams. Let me just see. Yeah, it's here. I'll go back up to that slide, but 235 Cornwall students sat for 484 AP exams. So some students just took 1 and some students took multiple exams. So it's important to keep that in mind too when you're looking at the data. So we went from 74 up to 86% of our students who took AP exams scored a 3 or better. And then we can see the blue is the total AP students, total number of students who actually sat for exams. And then the red is the number of exams that were given in every given year. And then the gold is AP students with scores 3+. And then you can see the average. So it's a good story. Yes?
I just want to be sure I'm interpreting this. And so the number on the, I'll call it the left y-axis,
That's numbers.
those only refer to the blues, the totals.
Blues,
but
red,
the
and
percentages,
gold.
sorry?
Blue, red, and gold. It's the number of,
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just breaking down the numbers that
Yeah.
are on. So on
Okay.
there's like 2 y-axes. So there's the numbers on the left and then the percentages on the right.
yes.
So I'm interpreting this that the numbers on the left refer to the blue because that's just an aggregate number, total of AP students, and that the percentages refer to all of the yellow because that's the percentage.
No,
Okay, so
all the bars are numbers to the left. So,
Yes.
yep.
and what is so total of AP students with, I got it. Okay, so okay. What was that in physics, in geometry, the axis that came out? That's when I quit geometry. And
There we go. You looking at this one first?
I was like, yeah. The Z axis. I was like, uncle.
So this, you can look at this as you would like the grades 3 through 8 exams, or just the regions. That you can see how many students sat for each of the exams for each year. It's okay. So I mean, the good news is everything kind of goes up, right, as you go from the left to the right. We have, in 2025, we had We had more students sitting for, who were taking AP exams. We have the number of exams, the red went up, and then the number of students who got 3 or higher on the exam went up. So the point of the graph was to show you that there's a nice trend going up, especially with the percentage of AP students with scores 3+.
Since it was my question, I think about the composition of the exams and what students are taking. I mean, if you look at the changes in what students are taking, and you just do, obviously we don't know what scores they got on what exams. But if I would say, just from a background, students are taking what are generally thought to be the easier of the AP exams. We treat it 3 as a 3, but they're taking exams that are generally considered, like for example, if you look at the math AP exams, you see a decrease in calculus, a decrease in statistics, and a huge increase in pre-calculus because of the new test. Which means, so if you're having more students taking pre-calculus and less taking calculus, you would expect that the number getting 3 would go up. Because same, if you consider like same ability level, but the tests they're taking are not necessarily as considered as rigorous or hard. And some of the ones in the social studies, AP exams, I would say that would probably, like generalization, but without knowing what are the scores on different exams, you still, the question about the composition, that it's not really an apples to apples, other than we have aggregates, but what's inside the aggregate is not the same. So that would be curious in looking at some of the raw data if it's available.
I mean, on the other hand, too, you look at chemistry tripled from under 20 kids to near 60 kids from 24 to 25. So
Yes, but
You
what
know,
I would, so
it's a mixed basket. It's hard to draw
Yeah.
a direct comparison.
So I think let's talk about pre-calculus. So pre-calculus came online last year. That could account for the dip in the calculus AB because students took pre-calculus to prepare to take and that was the whole point, am I correct, in giving the pre-calculus?
And going back to the whole child, so we have an advanced pre-calc class. So this allows maybe a student who wants to dip their toe in the water and take an AP class to get the credit, or at least to try the higher level, they can now take the pre-calc. So yeah, it would offset it, but it also goes to the offering status for all students, not just the kids that are at the highest level of our district.
So, and I think that's something worthy to take into consideration because years past, we always thought that our students who were, above the 75th percentile were the ones who were destined to take AP exams, and that's really not the case. I mean, you'll find that more students going towards the mean, the 50th percentile, are taking AP exams, and that's a good thing that people or students are wanting to stretch. And so, you can interpret the data so many different ways. But to me, I mean, if you have more students who are venturing in, and we know that the numbers have gone up for the number of students who are taking the exam, I'm all for rigor because I want students to push, but I think we also should celebrate the fact that more students are wanting to do this and to venture into taking advanced placement courses. And we also have the dual enrollment courses too, the SUNY courses too. So that's happening at the same time. Tricia, you have another question? Okay. You want me to go on? And so here's some more of a breakdown. So 484 students took AP exams. 47 of our AP students in 2025 were considered AP scholars. That means they received a 3 or higher on 5 or more exams. 17 of our AP students were considered AP honors. They received a 3 or higher on 4 or more exams. And then we have, I think that's a typo there, or what that should be. But 21 of our AP students in 2025 were considered AP with distinction. And so the last line, the last 6 years, although this past year, 86% of our students scored a 3 or higher, over the last 6 years, students have scored 83% or more, 3 or higher on the AP exams.
question just on the last line. So colleges awards credit for a score of 3 or higher.
Yeah.
But a 3 generally converts to be like a C, right? When it gets converted into a college transcript. Are colleges taking this more as peer credit so you can graduate early, so like you have these credits and they're already counting towards your graduation requirements?
Yeah.
Or are they mostly looking at them like this is a way of profiling a student, which is how challenging was the curriculum we took in high school, which means taking these advanced courses is mostly about trying to distinguish between students when grades have become compressed, which means like you're establishing a profile by taking the class and taking the exam, and whether you get credit or not is a secondary concern. And so I was wondering what maybe you're seeing or what you think is happening with how colleges are taking AP credit and other types of like concurrent enrollment credit.
I think both are true. I think that for students who are going into very competitive, looking at highly competitive schools, they're wanting to have more of the AP classes. Some students choose to do the SUNY classes because they know that if they go to a SUNY school, that if they get a certain grade or higher, they're gonna be able to transfer the credit. It's like a no-brainer for the whole SUNY system. But that doesn't negate too other SUNY, other dual enrollment schools like Marist. I mean, you can take a course at Marist, it may or may not transfer to another institution. So it's kind of like hit or miss. I do know too, it's 3 or higher they may accept, but for some, they may want a 4 to accept the course. They may want a 5 to accept the course. For some of the more rigorous AP exams, a 3 they will accept. So every institution has their own scale of what they will take and not take. But it's both ways. I mean, students are also doing this because they're building a resume. They're building a profile for that plus all the other things that they're doing for their next steps. Whether it be college or it be going to vocational school, they're going right into the workforce, they're going into the armed forces. They're all trying to, to be able to demonstrate themselves in the best light. And then here are our dual enrollment courses. So SUNY Albany, Foreign Language and Science Research, SUNY Orange Community College, English, Mathematics, Technology, and Business, Marist, Accounting and Music Theory. I kind of like the music theory. And new this year is SUNY Oneonta University for Government and Politics.
Is this the program where students, like seniors at Cornwall High School, could go to SUNY Orange for part of their senior year, take classes? Is that this program? No.
These are
So any of our dual enrollment courses are just the college courses the kids are taking
Here.
in the high school, and our teachers have to be approved by that college in
Right.
order to take it. So it's not just any teacher can teach that course; it has to be approved by the college.
But there are schools that do what you're saying. I know, for instance, Pearl River, they do that. Students can go to the local college, Rockland Community College, and they can be on campus there instead of being on campus here. I think it's easier for students to be here. So beyond Cornwall Central School District. And then these are the destinations for the class of 2025. So these are all the schools that the class of 2025 is attending. And there's 3 pages of schools. So it's an impressive list. SUNY is very well represented. Again, this will be posted tomorrow. And then our military, trade, technical schools. Any questions?
So I had my question before about the 3 to 8 ELA and math exams. So not surprisingly, like we have a higher proficiency, as you would expect, than the state average because we have a higher socioeconomic status than the state average. So the fact that we are doing better is somewhat par for the course. But looking at like, the 24 versus 25, and just these are the two next generation exams. If you look at like the state average, there's an increase in there, and just using that as a benchmark, the increases overall cumulatively for Cornwall is that our increases year over year were 35 points below the increases by the state average as a whole. So it means like, yes, the benchmark went up, we didn't go up as much as the benchmark by a significant amount. And that works out to be like 7 or 8% per grade. And then when I just did this by just tracking the same students, which means comparing last year's 5th graders with this year's 6th graders, so tracking them, because obviously there might be differences by different cohorts of students, it's a little bit worse, which means it's in the same ballpark, but that doesn't necessarily to do that. And it seems like we might have like a declining margin, right? In terms of like, obviously we should perform higher, socioeconomic status is higher, but just to use just one comparison to illustrate what I'm talking about, it is not surprising that Cornwall performs better than, let's say, New York City, because the socioeconomic status of the average student in New York City is much lower than Cornwall. But if you basically control for socioeconomic status and just look at the residual, which means what are the things that schools actually control, which means their own decisions about curriculum, hiring quality of teachers, et cetera, New York City's residual is larger than Cornwall's. So the question is like, is there anything that we can do, and not that tests are everything, but the point is like, is there something that we can do or more resources that would seem to maintain, I guess, the historic performance of the district?
So I think there's a couple of things that come into play besides socioeconomic status and other things. I mean, first thing that comes to mind is the test refusal. Although we're talking about 5 to 10%, maybe 15%, depending on which grade level you're talking about, it's not consistent. And so in most districts that I've worked in, you find that it's hard to find a group of cohort of students that have taken the multiple tests one year to the next. And so when you're comparing those tests in isolation, 2024, and then the next year comparing 2025, you don't know if the same group of students took the test from 4th grade to 5th grade. And so that becomes another variable. Within the district, you folks have been doing some major work in ELA, right? Fontes and Pinnell training has happened, Foundations has been implemented. Last year, you piloted 2 different math curriculums for elementary. So all those things come into play when you're doing a data analysis. And so it's kind of hard just to say, to look at the data. And also, too, again, I always come back to standard deviation. We don't know how many of those kids were a high 3 one year and they were a low 4 the next. We don't know. But when you really want to do a deep root analysis, those are the kinds of things that you're teasing out, too. So it's very hard just to say, here's our scores from 3rd grade to 4th grade, from this year to that year, and then to say, this week, we're going to put all of our, this is what we're running with. We really need to go and look at the data and look at students, and the district is embarking on that.
So, I mean, I take your points, and obviously there's always a way to go more granular on this. And, I think that, if there was more data, that could present it. The questions about, let's say, the distribution of the variation, standard deviation, I'm not sure why that wouldn't matter, because you're grouping across, proficiency is 3 and 4. So you're talking about half of the 2 of the 4. So you're not going to get the variation, because that's where most of the students are most places. But also, like, you could say students are taking it this year and not taking this year, but those would cancel each other out because we're looking at the average for the whole state and the whole district. So I think the point is that you would expect that the district, because it's smaller, would show a little bit higher variability, but you would see higher variability in all directions, not just in one direction. So I guess my question, though, was like, is there something we can do other than analyze the data and say, work harder, teach better, study more, that we as a school board could provide resources that would support it if that is a problem. And I'm not saying it is, it's just 1 year over year. So I guess my question was like, what can we as a school board, since this is our presentation of this, is that does this data lead to any actions that we could possibly think of or take? And that's where I would like, obviously we could have different interpretations and different analysis of the data, and I'm sure you have that.
I just can't hang my hat on it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's just too many. There's just too many variables to consider.
Right. And we've said year after year, like we're dealing in children and, socioeconomic status put aside or not, our district is changing and it's changing rapidly, and the needs that are coming and how we can support all of our learners. So how can you support us when we come for budget and we ask for the needs of, our AIS team or our early intervention team, continuing to support the resources that they need within programming and software and so on. Those are the pieces. We have tutoring for our students, for our ELL population, and for our testing in advance. So those are all things to continue as we look at budget, and we know it's going to be a really tough budget season, not getting rid of those critical pieces because, our student need is changing and every student needs something different, and that is growing in a reality.
Yeah, just a couple quick observations and some, kind of brief follow-up questions. First of all, thank you for this well-put-together presentation, and thank you, to our entire academic staff from central office to building leadership, and of course to our teachers who are putting the boots on the ground here. One, just in general, I saw a lot of green flags here, not a lot of yellow flags and red flags, right? We're a high-performing district. The state assessment data, as we know, this is the second year of the new test, so we could compare year over year, which we couldn't do last year, and saw a lot of, high achievement 2 years ago, followed up by high achievement, which is great. One question, in the past, it's been stated, and I would assume this is still happening, just want you to confirm, that the state doesn't just give the numbers, but prior to this, late summer, early fall, they give specifically like, hey, there was 50 questions in grade 3, and your school district did really great on these 40, and these were 5 or 10 areas strengthening. Is that still happening from the state level?
It's happening. Yeah, it's coming out.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's delayed because there's a moratorium on it. It doesn't get released until October, November. Not the best time for educators to be diving into that because, as you know, report cards, parent conferences, concerts, but those reports are being released. Karen Brooks sends out a lot of this information to administrators and staff, and so they are doing the deep dive into that. And then it's a matter of looking and seeing like the ADAM analysis. What questions did we not score as well as other districts, the county, the state, the RIC? Where did we do really well? Because we have to make sure we celebrate the good things that we, where are we learning, where are we doing well? And then why didn't we? Did we hit those standards enough times? Or maybe we don't have the right resources for those standards. And so there's a lot of questions that administrators are working with their staff during SIP time. They're also doing this work. So they are in the trenches and they're doing the work, and they're trying to figure out the best way to meet the students' needs who are struggling.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm we were still getting that. Obviously, that's the most important part, for the instructional staff to look at 3s and 4s, and that's not super helpful to them. But that information, I'm glad they're still having it, and that may be something to look at in the issue. Brendan flagged in that grade 7 of, hey, it's 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
7's had a little issue. Perhaps there's a specific thing that we can pinpoint to beef up.
And Jim,
there.
just to piggyback on that, so the skill strands are incredibly important, especially for the practice of what you have in front of you. We always feel like we're playing a little bit of catch up with the 3-8 exams, compared to the Regents exams, because we get that information so much sooner. So 3-8, right? Like by the time we get it and break it down, have the data team meetings, you may have already taught a lot of that content. Yeah. So, but yeah, to answer your question, those meetings happen. The grade levels have them. SIP is having them, and so on.
Great.
I just want to also piggyback, but we did bring in a consultant who worked with our staff members on Superintendent's Conference Day, and we're doing that ongoing work. Carrie Mullins, progress monitoring. How can we better target specific skill deficits How can we deliver an intervention? And then how can we monitor student progress? And so that's another big initiative that our teachers are working on with our administrators. So we are doing the deep dive. We're just trying to learn how to do it the best way.
Absolutely. Great. And one other issue, as I flagged, I looked at that cohort set of, the fourth graders become the fifth graders and all the different classes. And really the only one that jumped out to me was that fourth to fifth grade. Most of the cohorts as they went up, it was up 2 points, down 2 points, really within a margin of error. That was down maybe 5-6 points. It rebounds the next year. I think the obvious explanation is we are switching buildings for our elementary students a year earlier than most districts are. So just something for us to be mindful of, to try and make sure that we're making that transition as easy as possible for those fifth graders. Obviously, we're working on it, but just, that's something that jumped out to me. And just 2 more quick questions. The high school non-graduators, do any of those come back and graduate? We said we had 7 or 8 of them last year. Do we have people who could graduate a year late? Does that happen sometimes?
You can see the data where you can see in the graduation data, you'll see the August graduates. Some students will graduate later.
But after that point, they can't come back. So they typically would get like a GED if they were to complete.
Got it. And I spy with my little eye, I saw Calculus BC on the list of AP exams. It's been a discussion point. Are we teaching that, or is that on the list because some students have elected to take that of their own volition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, I actually had asked Karen to check that out for me because I found it too. And so we did. We found that every year there's a couple of students who take exams that are not taught through a formal course, and they do sit for the exam. So we do.
I just wanted to clarify because it's been a discussion. Just wanted to, from my understanding. Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you. That was really informative, and I think gave us a lot to think about as we move forward. And I think, to Christian's question and, Megan, your response about how can the board support, what is needed to support all our students in achieving their, greatest opportunities. So thank you for that. So now we're moving on to our consent agenda. We have items 2 through 11. Would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I would like to pull 7, 8, and 10.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything else? Okay. So the use of the consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make a more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. We've pulled numbers 7, 8, and 10. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for items number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 11?
So moved.
Second.
Carl, you got to speak up. I couldn't get to you fast enough. Jim and Christian, thank you. No, he didn't say anything. That's why he just. All right. So thank you. All in favor of approving the consent agenda for those items?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstaining? Okay, the motion passes for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 11. So consent agenda item number 7.
If I may, can we consider 8 and 10 first? Because those are, I think 10 is, for those of us who are on the policy committee, there was a policy, particularly we had some questions and we wanted to kind of bring it to the full board, particularly about the first reading for board committees. And so if we could just do 10 first. Or
Sure. So consent agenda item number 10. May I have a motion to approve this or to discuss it?
I think it got flip-flopped. I'm looking at it. What's in 10 should really be in F, and what's in F should be in the, is that what it is?
I didn't.
The committees are in 10.
So the committees are in 10. I think the point is that those are being adopted because those are without change, so they're just being readopted, while the rest of them are either at a first reading stage.
So that's why I'm saying, I think it just got, what's in new business are all being readopted. Those should have been in the consent agenda. And the ones that are in the consent agenda should have been in new business.
Well, the consent agenda ones are, I mean, the new business are the first reading. So no discussion. So that's what you're saying.
What
that-
Jim is saying is that if 10 requires discussion, then it could have been in new business, whereas you would, read and adopt all in the consent in one go.
But there was just two different groups of
But it's-
policies,
yeah.
and I think it got flip-flopped,
So-
and it's
so
fine, and we
We're
can
stopping to
discuss
discuss them.
it.
Yeah.
We can
Okay.
discuss it here. I just, yeah.
So, Jim, I agree with you on the general point, but that's why one reason I pulled it, because I thought it merited discussion.
All right, so can we have a motion for consent agenda number 10, first reading of the Board of Ed policies? Resolved upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education does hereby accept the first reading of Board of Education policies 2240, 2250, 2440, and 8113. May I have a motion?
Like an auctioneer. So moved.
Brendan, thank you. Second.
Second.
Jim, thank you. Discussion.
So let me start, but I'm going to ask Jim to, come in, because I think you had a perspective, particularly on board committees, about, the different things we were undecided about. So on these are all new policies. I think the extreme heat conditions is basically just a policy that we were mandated to create by legislation last year, and the other two are pretty much 2240 and 2440. I think are just they're relatively short and straightforward if you've seen the text. But in our board committees, one of the things we didn't really resolve in the policy committee was, and let me just take a step back. The reason for this policy is to memorialize and to give the committees some permanent status by putting them into policy. So audit and the policy committee are grounded in some other policies. Visitation and communications are not. So one way to do this was to list these different committees and kind of give them a permanent standing status by putting them into a board policy, which means, and then we looked at some language was a readoption or reapproval of committees at the reorganization meeting each year. And so that would be a different approach, which means we would vote to approve the policies, and then we would populate these, to approve these committees, and then we would populate these committees usually at the second August meeting. And so we had kind of a difference of opinion kind of on that, whether we want to kind of, in a sense, put these into the policies, list the committees, so that they kind of just restart every year and they're in our policies and they're set, or should we revote or reapprove them in a motion at the reorganization meeting? And so I think at least originally what I proposed was that why don't we list our standing committees so that, they're there and, that they have some basis, and then maybe what the other parts of the policy just creates a framework for committees and how they are filled and what the committees are expected to do. But I was saying maybe just list our 4 existing committees that are long-standing. But I think, Jim, you had pointed out, and this is where I'm going to maybe pass the baton to you, about perhaps reapproving them or voting for them at the organization meeting. So you want to present that perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's what, that's on board docs right here, I think leaves that perspective in there. It doesn't have voting on the to reinstitute each committee in the policy on committees, if I'm reading this one right, yeah.
Right, and in the discussion, though, we thought maybe we would want the insight or the input of other board members about what they thought would be the best way before the policy was adopted, maybe on a second reading, and this would be the place to have that discussion.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, I will echo your opinion, Christian, that this policy was new, and it was, I think, unanimously agreed upon by the policy committee, and just what we thought was for an ease of operation in the reorganization meeting every July, the same way that we say, here's the law firm, here's the auditor, here's all these things, that we throw in an extra item that says, here are the current standing committees. So just to kind of take a vote on that every year.
Is that what we did this year?
We
that
voted-
feels familiar, but
We voted to seat members on the committee, but this would be to add a step to actually vote, just to list, hey, here's the committees.
Right.
And we can change, we can add, subtract committees at any time by a board vote, but just, as a point of practice, just to have that every July to say, here are the current committees. So for instance, I think the thinking is audit, audit we have to have by law, but we have audit and policy and facilities and communications and visitation as kind of our 5 standing committees, but I think it's also listed that we have a new handbook committee and a scholarship committee, which really have fallen off and have not met in a couple of years, or have not had a meeting in a couple of years. So we would just, next July, not include those in the list of current committees. So it just forces an annual review of what committees we have.
So if I'm understanding, because the policy that I read didn't have any of those listed. The policy was really just about minutes, posting them, et cetera.
Right.
So the discussion or the question is, do we add an element to this policy that formalizes what our committees are, meaning the 5 that you've mentioned, and then every July we revisit the policy to confirm those are our committees or to adopt?
So we reviewed policies from a couple different districts, and thank you for Christian for gathering those and bringing it to us to make our job easy. And some of them put the committees in the policy on committees, and others put it in their reorganization meeting. And we thought the reorganization meeting was a better way to handle it. However, Christian just brings it up as a discussion point for the whole board to consider, since it's the first meeting, if anybody would like to see it within this policy, if I understand.
The point is, we didn't put it in the language because I think we had more than one point of view, and we thought they were all valid, but we were only 4, and we thought that we would, when we did this, we would just, anyone does have an opinion about this, we could add that in so that what it gets adopted includes that input. So I think the point about it is, we, as I said, we looked at different versions of this policy by different districts, and we did pull from different policies, things that we thought were good, including like taking minutes and things of that sort. But we also then saw, this was one where they had an annual revote, and another one where they just kind of enumerated a list of these are policies recognized by the board. And as I said, there's more than one way to do it. If anyone has a strong or preference on it, we thought this would be the opportunity to amend that before the second reading. And I'm not sure anyone does. I think its policy is fine as is, but this is an opportunity that we do it now and not just 3 years from now when we review it.
Thank you. Other discussion, or anyone feel strongly that we modify the policy as it's stated for the first reading? Okay. So may I have a vote to approve the first reading of the Board of Ed policies 2240, 2250, 2440, and 8113?
So moved. Oh, wait, vote.
All in favor?
Yes.
I like when someone else does that. Anyone opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Okay, so now we have numbers 7 and 8. You would like to do number 8, Christian?
Sure. I know the board this has been already briefed by Mr. Fink on this, but just for the public about why the audit, we have another audit report here, and just to make clear that this is not because there's an issue or that something was wrong with the previous audit. This is mostly as a result of the government shutdown, and therefore we need certain information from the federal government, and the federal government was not in session or operating, and so we could not finish our audit completely. So we already voted on the external audit, and this is just mostly to tidy up that one part that we couldn't do because the federal government was shut down at the time in October, and we had to approve this by state by a certain date. So I just want to make that clear to the public that this is just basically a last piece of what usually would have been included in the external audit.
Thank you.
And it's a clean opinion.
Yes, and
May I have a motion to accept the independent auditor's report for the single audit from EFPR Group CPAs covering the fiscal period from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025? Richard, thank you. May I have a second? Lofton, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion passes. And consent agenda number 7. Christian.
So number 7 is the budget calendar, and as of last year, we had a discussion about this, particularly about the polling site, which is included in this calendar. And as some of you know, I spent some time over the summer looking at the polling books and just by street addresses, looking at the turnout or the turnout in different parts using the electoral districts of Cornwall, New Windsor, and Woodbury. So not looking at any personal information, but just like if you live on Angola Road, you go into this box and just looking at those numbers. And I did a complete for 2 different years. And one of my concerns was like the vote distortion that occurs because of the location of the polling place. And so one of the things, and I just want to report this because I think we should reconsider either a second location or an alternate location, basically meaning the high school, and leaving that open, especially because in our budget line, there is more money allocated toward our annual meeting than there was previous years. So there is more money allocated because there was a potential second vote that was occurring. So there is money in the budget that wasn't there in previous years. And so perhaps we have some more latitude on this. But the basic result, and I think this is just important to note, that someone living in Cornwall and Hudson, just because there are 3 electoral districts, so you can get it cleaned, that is about 2.5 times more likely to vote than someone living in New Windsor. And that was true not just one time, but also in a vote, one with the highest turnout and one with the lowest turnout in the last 5 years. And so what does 2.5 times mean in terms of vote distortion? That's basically the same vote distortion that occurs because we have the Electoral College to elect the president and we elect senators from unequally sized states, which is a magnitude or a scale that most people would see as material. And I think that it's not because it'll change the outcome of any election, or I think it would change the whether a vote would get approved or not, but it does affect how, let's say, decision makers, knowing that you can safely ignore or maybe not be as aware of certain things that happen because of that. And generally, that's why people talk about vote distortion as being a major concern. So I would urge, as I did last year for the same reasons in the discussion of last year, that we at least consider a more centrally located, both in terms of geography and population, which would be the high school, or as I suggested last year, potentially having 2 voting locations as some other districts do. I'm not going to go into the details beyond that, but I think that bears mentioning, and I would move to amend this to leave that last voting site open, at least at this time. And that would, if we want to make a formal motion on that, but I don't have any objection to the rest of the budget calendar.
So Christian, right now, just to clarify, the budget calendar lists Cornwall Middle School as the polling site, and you're asking that we leave that open to have a discussion around what that actually might be come the election, or I don't know that we're in a position to amend it right now.
I would amend the calendar just to leave it blank for the moment.
Okay.
And adopting the rest of the calendar as per document.
And then have that as an agenda item in the future to discuss.
As I said, if it's worthy of discussion. I think people know what my views on this are, but I think it's worthy of its own discussion, and it seems this last year was presented in January, presented now in December for the budget calendar. I just thought this was the appropriate time before we make a decision where it's kind of, in a sense, included inside the budget calendar. So I can make it a motion to amend it, and then we can vote on the amendment, or rather than, let's say, vote against the whole calendar, which I don't think is necessary.
So it would have to become an agenda item for us to discuss it, right? And then what is the downside, just to approve this as is, still have the discussion, because we could then amend it to include a second polling location.
So obviously we can always change things and amend things in the future because we're not bound, and we can always make different decisions tomorrow than we do today. So arguably there is no difference. But I do think there is importance to, when there are made decisions, they generally don't get revisited because they're considered settled issues. And once we vote on something, we're basically saying there's a position of the board by the vote of the board for that issue. And while I, generally when things are settled, I support the position of the board regardless of my personal opinion. And I don't think it's any different than saying, vote on, delete this now, make the decision in 3 or 4 weeks at the next meeting, and we can then adopt it then. So I would say that would leave it open and have the same minimal impact on operations or any plans that people are making.
I'm okay with either. I just was curious what that was.
So that's my view
and
on it,
if-
why I would prefer my direction.
Other discussion?
I mean, I would lean towards proving something that could stand on its own as a default, if we don't. In terms of, to answer the question of, that we will default to doing nothing. I mean, anybody on this board can put anything on the agenda. One of the officers of the board is certainly in pole position to put anything on the agenda, so I don't see that as a concern. I think that it's a worthy discussion to have since we have 2 new board members this year. We could have that whole discussion again because there were trade-offs that I think we would all be well served to just be reminded of, and certainly our 2 newest members could hear those both sides of that. So I'm all in favor of putting this on the agenda first meeting of the new year. But just generally, just as general practice, it feels like, why are we even approving this if it's going to come with caveats, if it's not even a full resolution? Like, we either approve it or we kick the can on it entirely. And I think that we should have something on the books heading into 2026. So I would be in favor of approving as is and not amending it, since there's no material difference if we go back and amend it later.
Other discussion? Jim?
I would be in favor of approving it as it is, and I do not see the need for amendment. And we had this issue discussed on multiple occasions last year, and we discussed a lot of operational and financial concerns of why we have the budget vote where we have it. I don't think we need to relitigate that. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, so I think everybody knows where I stand on this too. I don't think it really matters whether we amend this or we just vote as long as we do discuss it at the next meeting or, one of the meetings in January. And now that we have, it seems, some more data from the voters and the poll books, I think we can continue this discussion and see if there's any new perspectives about it.
Thank you. Carl, anything to add? Jamie?
I agree with the general consensus to approve it and then go back and amend it if we decide to. I would love to have the discussion. Yeah.
Lofton?
Agreed.
Christian, anything to add?
I am disposed to make the motion to amend it, and of course that would have to be seconded, and we would vote on that. But hearing, I'll just we can vote on this, and I know what my vote will be on this at this time. I could make the motion. Someone has to join me in seconding it for it to be considered. I'm not sure that there is a second vote, but I don't. If people are committed to discussing it, I think I can take that, but that doesn't change my vote. I did not make a motion.
He did not. Okay, so I'm committed to putting it on the agenda for early January to discuss this. Can we have may I have a motion to approve or to adopt the attached 2026-2027 budget calendar as stated? Brendan, thank you. Second? Lofton, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Okay, the motion passes with 1 abstention and 7 approves. And we will add that to the agenda for discussion. Christian, I'll just ask that you can lead that discussion since you've done the data analysis and probably have the most information around what we need to consider. Are you good with that?
I'll lead the discussion. Do you want me to make a presentation on this, or do you want me just to, what information do people want? Because I'm not sure that there is data, but there's also like, sometimes it's a value decision as well.
Sorry, John has a thought.
Just, I issued a memo to the board last year with some information. I could share that again with the board, which breaks out costs and some of the concerns, as we did discuss this last year. That could be your starting point for discussion. Again, it's a
Perfect.
year-old memo, but it encompasses a number of different things.
Thank you. I think a discussion is sufficient in terms of, what we need to consider. But I welcome you to bring, the data and such that you want us to also consider. All right. Yes. Jim.
Yeah, Christian, if you have the data that you indicated, if you could email it to the board so we could review before discussion, I think it would yield a more fruitful discussion.
I'll do my best. I
Thank
think
you.
there's some time, and we have some holiday days coming up, so I should be able to get that to you before the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, so moving on to the new business non-consent agenda. May I have a motion to accept the first reading, review, and subsequent adoption of Board of Education policies 1420, 1420R, and 4513?
So moved.
Brendan, thank you. A second. Lofton, thank you. Discussion? No?
I mean, let me just give context to understand why this is. We had committed to kind of reviewing some of these policies in light of certain issues that have been brought up to the board. And so the policy committee considered these policies and did a close reading of them. And we adopted them. We adopted them as they had been written before, so we're re-adopting them now. But we had made a commitment to look at these policies, and I think we honored that commitment.
Jim, you got your hand on the button? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right. All in favor of adopting these board policies?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, the motion, Jim?
We're done with that.
The motion passes.
The motion passes.
thank you.
Before we go on to recognition of visitors,
Yes.
I wanted to make a motion to just include a 60-second committee report from the Facilities Committee, since we just met before this, just to share some important information and dates with the public. So I just wanted to make a
Great.
motion to add an agenda item for a brief
All right, so we're adding-
committee update.
And I
Okay.
will second.
All right, so Jim adds the motion, Christian seconds. All in favor of adding the agenda item on the policy committee?
Aye.
All right. Opposed?
Facilities.
Facilities, excuse
Oh,
me, the
that's okay.
Facilities Committee. Talking policies. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make it brief as we're rounding the turn here on the last meeting of the year. But, we did have a facilities committee meeting tonight, had our new construction manager in attendance, had members of the architect team in attendance. And the construction management firm really dug in and looked at the existing pricing that we had for projects, the existing list of projects that we had, both from previous existing committee work as well as the 5-year building conditions survey. In short, it's about $60 million, $70 million in total projects. And really, that's not doing new fun stuff. That's those are needs. Those are just maintaining infrastructure. I think that the committee would feel strongly that all of those are needed, and it's just a matter of timing. So that's the number we're at now. Working with John is working with our financial advisors in terms of, okay, we have the piggy bank saved. How much money does that get us? It's going to be somewhere in the low $20 million range. Still working on what that number is, but $60 million of projects, $20 million of funding. So we set our next 3 meetings as a committee. Thursday, January 8th at 7 p.m., Wednesday, January 21st at 7 p.m., and Thursday, February 5th at 7 p.m. Locations forthcoming, and those will get posted on the district calendar. But just wanted to let you know that we're going to make some decisions as a committee to pare that down. We're going to have a discussion of do we recommend to the board to make this proposed bond for the spring a revenue neutral bond where we say, hey, you've already saved in the piggy bank, do you want to turn your quarter into $1? Or do we want to propose a part of the bond that comes with the tax increase to pay for long-term capital improvements? So just wanted to put that on everyone's calendar. Going to have discussions in January, certainly at one or both of the board meetings, and then definitely February, and try and nail down a scope of projects. So that's it. Thank you.
Discussion? Anyone else? I'm sorry. Jim, for the sake of folk,
I welcome any questions. Sorry for those.
no, just going to say for the sake of those of us who weren't really on the board in the last go around with the bond and all of that, in the January meeting, could you just spend a little bit of time explaining? So you're saying, you know, like 20 million is our cap unless we go and raise the tax. You know, just give us kind of like, how does that formula work? How does it become neutral? Just so that we all understand and talking the same language, because as this becomes talk around this table, people in the community are going to start asking us. And I just want to make sure that we're all well informed in terms of how that works and not coming with assumptions from other places that we've heard or done, et cetera.
Yeah, we can certainly go more into that, just the very short version, just to put it on record while we're talking about it. The state gives on capital projects a state aid percentage to each district. I haven't checked ours. It used to be 77% at the last bond. We used, what's that? Yeah, we used 70 or 75 as a rule of thumb. 75 is pretty easy because you say, okay, if we've saved $1, you can do $4 of improvements, and the district or the state will kick in those $3. Not immediately. The state doesn't write you that check. They pay you in equal installments over 20 years, 25 years, whatever the bond length is, which is why we vote to bond it out. So we do have, we opened a capital reserve number 2 in 2022, the same year we passed the first capital project with a total cap of $5 million. That has been filled. Last year, we opened a capital reserve number 3, 2 years ago. I don't know if it was 24, 25. We opened capital reserve number 3 with a max available to fill that of $5 million. There's, I think, $7.5 million in there right now. So
Total 7.5 million roughly. I think it's 5 billion in
Sorry,
2
two-
and 2.5 in 3.
you're right. There's 2.5 in number 3. The 2.5 plus the 5 makes 7.5. Thank you, Christian, for clarifying. So we have that money available to us, and you can essentially multiply that by 4. That's a little bit less because of some different factors. Now you can say, okay, so we've got low $20 million that we can do, quote unquote, revenue neutral, because we've already saved the money. And public, you're taking a vote to just say, would you like to turn your quarter into $1? The state is going to chip in this money if you, public, vote for it. If we want to go above and beyond that number, then it would have to come out of, the annual budget. Okay, so how much additional would we be willing to spend? So that's a discussion that we have, talked about as a committee. We have not made a recommendation yet. There's a lot of pieces to put together, but just wanted to throw that out to the group that's coming down the pike, and it's coming down rapidly in the new year.
Thank you.
And Jim, can I just add one thing? Because I think, when we look at the math, because what we're talking about is we have $60 million of worthy projects and a certain amount available in our reserves, is that I think one thing that the public is going to be confused about, and I know you know this very well, which is not everything we propose is aidable, right? And so there are things we were required to do, which I believe were conditioned on what we did in the last capital project, that we must do in this capital project to get the matching funds. And I think that people need to understand that, because why is this priority? It's not necessarily because it is necessarily the most important thing, but it's a requirement for getting the funds for the things we do think are, very high priority. And I think, that's what, as you said, it's not exactly it's not going to be an exactly 3-to-1 matching. And I think that is, a consideration in making sure we make that clear, because otherwise people kind of go and then they start getting the Christmas tree of all the things that fit under a certain number, because they think we have the next number of funds sitting there that can be spent, and it's fungible in many different ways. And as you know, that's not quite exactly how it works, which is why we are sitting in a cafetorium not a cafeteria, because cafeteriums, I believe, are aidable and cafeterias are not, I think, is the way the state looks at it. And so, that's why we have cafeteriums throughout New York State, because cafeteriums are aidable.
Great, thank you. I'm sure we'll get more detail and more granular as we get going, but that's helpful to have a general understanding. John, anything to add? If I just want to,
No, I think Jim did a great job. and
Okay.
Christian did a great job updating. We'll probably have a little bit more of an update at the next board meeting as well. And I think to regularly update the board on the work of the committee, because there's a lot of work taking place, certainly at the district level, and then bringing it to the committee, trying to move this forward for, what are we going to present to the board and then ultimately to the voters.
thank you so much. Okay, so moving on to, public comments, there's no one here, so I'm just gonna use my deductive reasoning. So we're gonna move on to closing comments from the Board of Ed members. And Jocelyn, anything to share?
Just want to wish everybody happy holidays, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Thank you. Enjoy your break. Jim, does everyone mind if we just go around the table?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy Hanukkah to our Jewish families. Started last night. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody, and I just hope that everybody, when they're gets time to rest and relax and spend time with friends and family during this season, and gets to reflect on a 2025. Hopefully, it was good for you. If not, hopefully 2026 will be better. And hope everybody gets to spend time with those that they love. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of echoing Jim. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas. Have a great New Year, and thanks to everyone for all their hard work this year. So we'll see you next year.
Just wanted to thank everybody and enjoy your holidays, because we know the new grandpa any minute now. He's excited about it, so enjoy.
Well, congratulations, Carl. And yeah, ditto to everybody. Hope everybody gets time to be with the ones you love and be kind to the ones you don't. And we'll see you in 26.
Oh no, I'll go first. Yeah, just happy holidays to everyone in the district, and I want to special shout out to the elementary schools for keeping me on my toes with Spirit Week. It's been real fun, but the kids really love it, and it's been awesome to watch. So thanks.
Yeah, happy holidays to everyone.
I will demur.
Okay, great. This is just two things I want to say. One, I want to acknowledge Linda. We're doing a lot this year. Like when we think about what we're doing with facilities, superintendent search, now we're starting with strategic planning. And on all these calls, our partners are saying, oh, I need to know who in your admin office is going to help us with, room reservations and getting all the people together. And, so we're doing a lot this year that's tapping you, I think, more so than typical. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for always doing it with such a pleasant attitude. So I really appreciate that. I'm sure all of my colleagues would agree. And, it's just a moment, I think, when Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, of course, but it's a moment where I know I reflect and think, when I think about being in Cornwall, what a truly blessing, or if that's not your thing, how lucky we are, to be here and surrounded by people that genuinely care about the community. We might not always agree, but I think everyone is coming with an intention to really make this the best place it can possibly be, so that all of us can, thrive and be the best versions of ourselves and our families. And so as I kind of think back at, the past year and the year to come, I am really grateful for that. And I'm grateful to share this opportunity with all of you and get to know you. So I thank you for, your continued service and support. And I really look forward to what we're going to be able to accomplish in the second half of the year. There's a lot we have going on, but it's all good stuff. So thank you. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Brendan, a second. Often, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We're adjourning at 9:14. Thank you, everyone.